What's going on, team? It's Caddy with Money Investing. I hope that you all are having an amazing day. So I wanted to give you guys an update on the S&P 500 futures. Right now, you guys can see they're up a little bit over 1%, meaning that the market did gap up over 1%. So the S&P 500, if you were to pull up the SPY, which is the S&P 500 index ETF that tracks the S&P 500 index itself, is up almost 1.5%. So now if we go back to the futures and I give you guys an update on where I see the S&P 500 index and the futures going today and later this week, we are expected to hear from Jerome Powell later today. So he's going to address the outbreaks in cases in some of these states, and he's also going to talk about the stimulus package and what that's going to look like moving forward. But in my previous videos, we identified this sell-off on Thursday, which happened on 6/11 last week between these two white lines that you guys see. Moving forward on Friday, the markets did gap up, but they were making lower highs and lower lows. And that's essentially what we recognized in yesterday's video. Moving forward, this consolidation period that you guys see were essentially based off of the Thursday's low, which was the lowest point before it started consolidating. And then on Friday, it hit that low, pushed up, started making lower highs, and then for a brief moment, it breached that 3,000 level, which again, we recognized in my previous market updates, and then it pushed up. So on Sunday night, the futures gapped down, and this Friday's low was essentially acting as a good support for the S&P 500 futures. So the Thursday's low and Friday's support started acting as a new resistance for the stock right around this level. So you guys can see there was so much consolidation in this red area before the S&P 500 essentially sold off, broke below, and broke down off that support. And then yesterday, when the Fed came out with the news that they were going to start buying corporate bonds, on top of the fact that they're already buying ETFs that include investment grade and junk debt, that sent the stock market rallying all the way up to Friday's high. So if you guys watched my market update from yesterday, there's two key levels that I had identified in that video. The first one was this Thursday's resistance at 3120, right around that 3117 to 3120 level. And the reason for that is that's also Thursday's resistance. So that's the price point that the S&P 500 futures hit and the huge sell-off began. So that's right around this level. You guys can see that was on Thursday, 6/11. Prior to that, that is also a level where the S&P 500 futures has previously found its support. So we understand that this old support was acting as a new resistance on Thursday, which is why this huge sell-off happened. So that's the first key level, and we had identified this sort of range that we need to look out for today and going into later this week. Another key level that I had recognized was going to be this right here, which is Friday's resistance. So even though the market sold off on Thursday, they gapped up, but they were making lower highs and lower lows. So there was some type of weakness in the pattern. So this right here was going to be Friday's resistance. So this Friday's resistance can very well be acting as a new support for the S&P 500 futures. So now if we move forward and find out where the S&P 500 futures are trading, you guys will notice a pattern that is very similar. It's consolidating, right? So it's going sideways. So the 3120, which we had recognized yesterday as going to be a clear resistance, is holding true to the fact that it could potentially be acting as a resistance, as the futures have gotten rejected here multiple times. And the interesting part is that Friday's resistance has now started acting as a good support. You guys can see that it is bouncing off of those levels. So we do see a lot of consolidation in this range right now between 3080 and 3120. So moving forward, where do I see the patterns going? Where do I see the S&P 500 futures and the index going? So far, to give you guys an update and a recap, Thursday we had this huge sell-off. The market gapped up on Friday, but it did sell off, making lower highs and lower lows. Even though it closed green on the day, there was weakness in the pattern. On Sunday night, the futures opened, they started consolidating before breaking down of their key support level. Then they pushed up on Fed news with all the stimulus and the liquidity that they're providing. Now, Thursday's resistance acting as an ongoing resistance, Friday's resistance acting as an ongoing support. So what I need you guys to understand is that when there's so much consolidation and so much indecision in the markets, it doesn't matter if the markets open higher or lower. What matters is where the strength and the weakness is going. So in my opinion, this strength and this buyer momentum came from the Fed's news. So moving forward, after so much consolidation, it's either going to break out of 3120 or it's going to break below 3080. So these are the two levels that I'm going to be personally watching very closely. And the reason for that breakout or breakdown is going to be a catalyst. And the catalyst is going to come from the Fed later today and later this week based on the stimulus and based on the fact that how they're going to address the fact that there are outbreaks in these states. So other macroeconomic indicators such as unemployment and earnings, in my opinion, I think are priced into the market to some extent. But moving forward, it largely depends on the amount of liquidity and the Fed news and the catalyst that they provide to the entire market. But I wanted to give you guys a complete update on how the pattern has been doing over the last few days and where are we coming from since last week and what are some of those key support and resistance levels in the S&P 500 futures. So to give you guys a quick recap, 3120, which is Thursday's resistance before the market sell-off happened. That is again acting as a new resistance for the futures, and Friday's resistance is now acting as an ongoing new support because the stock is bouncing off of that level. So this red area that you guys see, we see a lot of consolidation in that area right now, and the futures are going to either break out of that level or break down of that level. So a few things that we need answers to: whether the market is going to consolidate for the rest of the day, rest of the week, or if it does break out or break down of these levels, how's the momentum? How's the buyer's momentum or the seller's momentum? Where is the strength and weakness for the stock and the futures? Are they making higher highs and higher lows going into the day, going into the week? Or if these indices are showing us Friday's weakness, essentially gapping up, but then selling off the rest of the day. So those are some of the questions that we need to answer and kind of figure out from a price action standpoint and volume standpoint and how the tick index performs. Essentially meaning how many stocks in a given day are going to be ticking up, meaning advancing in value versus ticking down that are declining in value. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about the S&P 500 futures and where the markets are going to go this week. And I would love to hear from you guys. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos related to the stock market, company analysis, and technical breakdowns. As always, happy investing, have a green day and a green week. I will see you guys in the next video.